Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
Hey there, everybody. Scott Cowan here, your host at the Exploring Washington State podcast. And you're about to listen to an episode I recorded recently with Jesse Butterworth. Jesse is the lead singer of the Seattle area band, the West Coast Feed. And he's also doing a solo career, and he's releasing his first solo album later this year. And that album's going to be called All the Gold I've Struck. During this episode, Jesse shares a lot of great stories with us about his recording career through the years, his where he's been performing, how the bands are put together. There's just a lot of great information here. One of the things that he shares that I personally found fascinating, and it has nothing to do with Washington State, must confess, but he recorded All the Gold I've Struck at Abbey Road Studios in London. You know, that famous little studio where Beatles albums, Dark Side of the Moon, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, et cetera, have recorded. And Jesse, I'll just let him tell the story. It's great. I think the story about Abbey Road is fantastic, and I enjoyed every moment of it. But I'm going to let you listen to the episode. Thank you for tuning into the Exploring Washington State podcast. We really appreciate all of you. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we'd love that. And it'd be really great if you would take a few minutes and write an honest review for us. We're looking for feedback. We want to get better. We want to deliver what you guys are looking for. And you can help us out by hitting that subscribe button and sending us a review. All right, let's get started. All right, my guest today is Jesse Butterworth. Jesse, thank you for being a guest and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
So I'd like to just jump in, and I tell the story of how I found out about you and your band and you and your solo work. And that is through a longtime friend of mine, Michael Wansley. You had him sing the hook on Shake It, which got heavy rotation in my household for a while. Nice. It was a very cool song. And that's how I was introduced to you in the West Coast Feed and now your solo work. So how did you find Juan? So let's just start with that question. How did you find him for that track?
Well, I love that when people say, "Oh, you got Juan's to sing the hook on your song," because it always makes it sound like we're like, we're like hip hop or like we're rap or something. We're so far from that. But,
far from that, yeah.
But it does earn us some serious street cred. So, yeah, we the guitarist in our band, Matt Wool, he has roots in Bellingham and knew Juan's way back in the day, and had a friend who still, I think, was working with Juan. This was, I think they were all maybe in college together. So I can't remember. He would be the one that could tell you the actual.
So did Matt go to Central? Because we all went to Central in Ellensburg.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then I probably ran across him at some point then too, but I don't remember him. So anyway.
Wait, is Central the one? No. Sorry, not in Ellensburg. He went to what's the one in Western, right? Is that the one Western, in Bellingham? Oh, yeah. He went to Western. So I don't know. Now, see, this is why I'm saying you need to ask Matt. I don't even remember what it was, like friend of a friend or some connection there, but it was something where we were like, man, it'd be great to get just a really great baritone on this part, get a guest, spot. And so Matt, kind of hooked it up with a friend, and yeah, he just kind of showed up at the studio one day, and we were like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was ready to roll, and it was great. Yeah,
it's a great song.
Thanks.
It's a great song, and so that was my introduction to you guys. So, how did we'll talk about the West Coast Feed first for a couple seconds. How did you get started with that band, and what's the story there?
Story was several years ago. My friend Matt that I was just talking about, he and I were in Austin together, and he and I have known each other for a long time, and we've kind of made music off and on. But we were in Austin, and we were there for like some work stuff. But in the evenings, we were out, and and it's just such a eclectic artistic city. And so we went and saw a show, I think almost every night. So we went and saw a guy named Kishi Bashi, who, if you don't know him, he's fantastic.
Okay.
And he's a singer-songwriter and like violinist, incredible. And his live show is just insane. And so we saw that. And then the next day we went and saw The Head and the Heart. at Stubbs. And so it was when we were at Stubbs that we turned to each other kind of halfway through the show. And ironically, watching a Seattle band that we're from Seattle, watching them in Austin, but we just turned to them in the show. And we were like, we should be doing something, like, why don't we do something? What are we afraid of, or what? I think we just sort of felt like, oh, we're probably too old, or we're too busy, or we're too whatever, and we just said, why not, And so we went home, and within, I don't know, maybe a month or so, we'd started kind of trying to assemble this band. I'd been working on songs that didn't really have a home, and then suddenly it kind of became a lot more focused, and everything started happening fast. And every rehearsal, it was kind of a joke for a while. Every rehearsal, we would have a new person. And so that would add, that was kind of snowball. And Matt's a multi-instrumentalist, and so he was the first drummer. And then we were like, well, it'd be nice actually to have you on bass, because he's a really good bass player too. So we brought in a drummer, moved him to bass. And then we were like, well, he's a really good guitarist. So we're like, well, let's bring in a bass player, and had to move over to guitar. And then we started adding, we added a violin, we added a saxophone, we added a trumpet, we added a trombone, until there were about 9 of us at one point. And we've trimmed that down to a very small number of 7 now.
7. So you can all use a 16-passenger van, and
yes, we
trailer. Maybe go to a show.
It's like we call it the Mormon assault vehicle, because it's like that's the only way we can fit. Is like, all right, here it comes, and it looks like a clown car when we get out. Just like to see the look on people's faces when we come in, when we roll in for shows, is like, oh man, worst thing that ever, worst tour story that ever happened to us, particularly in a band this big, and the whole thing is like, it's a horn section and electric guitars and bass and drums, and it's big bombastic, sound.
Right.
We were in the Catskills Mountains in New York for a festival, and had flown in for that, and it turned out to be an absolute nightmare. It kind of like, once we got there, we were starting to get some serious, what was the name of that? I'm blanking on the name. What was the name of that festival that was like super, like a total bust, like out in the middle of the Caribbean or something? Flame Fest or something Fire Fest. I think it's called Fire Fest. Yeah. We're starting to get Fire Fest vibes when we were there, just sort of like, I don't know that this is real. I don't know that these people know what they're doing, whatever. And so anyhow, we got up, we got there for our sound check, and they were not ready to go, and which is not that abnormal. And so we hung out for a while, but I mean, they had some like pretty legit acts on this festival. So we were thinking, I mean, it's got to be somewhat real. And so by the time we finally get up to play, we walk up, and the stage manager, who's already so frazzled, goes, okay, so what are you guys, like an acoustic act or something? And we're like, what? I'm like, no, not at all. We're like, I explain, horn section and electric guitar, drums, bass, whatever. And he's like, well, where's your instruments? And I said, well, we brought our instruments, but we don't have backline, and he's like, we don't have backline. Like, what are you talking about? And so apparently somewhere along the way, they didn't ever pass along our rider and our, when we advanced the date. And so we were like, and they were already so behind, and the show was supposed to start in 15 minutes or something. And so they just ended up breaking into like another band. It's like a pretty big national band. And they were like, do not ever tell anybody we use their stuff.
Oh, jeez.
They broke in, basically broke out all their stuff. And, we played all their gear, and
oh my gosh,
that was my biggest, that was our big nightmare scenario.
So one of the questions we always we're trying is like I said to you before we hit record, we're still feeling our way out here with the whole music concept on the episodes, but the goal of Explore Washington State is always to talk about the state and cool things here. As a musician, 2 questions. Where's the coolest place in Washington you've seen a band? And where's the place that you've played that you think is the best place to play?
Man. Sorry, say it one more time. Where's the what?
When you've obviously gone and seen a lot of shows while you live here in Washington State. So where's the coolest venue you've seen a band play at?
Okay.
And conversely, where's the coolest place you've played at?
Oh, got it. Okay. Boy, good question. Good question. So I am not originally from here, and I'm originally from California. And when Seattle really hit the map with grunge and all of that stuff, I didn't live here, and I was sort of into it, but I really wasn't. Like I never really got super into Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all those great Seattle bands when they were popular at the time. I was like a kid living few generations before, like I was immersed in the Beatles and Paul Simon and James Taylor and Elton John and stuff like that. And so I say all that to say I kind of missed that. It kind of missed me. And so when I got up here and there was, when we would play certain venues, definitely most of the guys in the band are from here. And so there's kind of, at least half of them are, and there's sort of this sense of like awe and wonder, and because I missed that, I think I have kind of maybe a different point of view when I'm going into places of just sort of like, well, that was cool, or whatever, like missing maybe some of the history or the local legend, around it. But man, seeing people play, I mean, I've seen people at Macaw, and that is, I think, incredible. It kind of looks like it's, half out of a scene of like an old, out of Amadeus or something, and half out of a scene of like the, when the council gets together in Star Wars, like it's like, it's just like acoustically incredible. It's perfect. I love that. And one thing I love though is how, people are so oriented. We live in, I think, one of the most beautiful places in the entire world, and we can't access the outside half the year, and so when we can, people are just like, people go crazy. And so the amount of outdoor stuff around here is so awesome. And that's one of my favorite things is when you can get to an outdoor concert where they have decent sound, and I just live not too far from Chateau Ste. Michelle Winery, and they do concerts every summer. And we love going there and experiencing that. But as far as places we played, it was really fun to play the Crocodile, and it was fun. That was actually one of the very last shows we played before everything shut down. And little did we know that we would be one of the last bands to play the original Crocodile before they closed down and moved to another location. So that was pretty cool. And that was definitely one of those locations that, it was fun sitting in the green room ahead of time and with us and a few other the bands that we were playing with and all this, just kind of talking about, several of the different guys talking about growing up, saying, "Oh, I saw Soundgarden here. I saw, some of these really cool Pearl Jam shows or whatever there." And so it's fun to be part of that history.
That iconic 90s Seattle sound that swept the world there for a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of weird to be living in it and watching it from the outside or not from the outside, but from inside the bubble watching it was kind of like, this is kind of weird. So recently I'm going to skip over to your solo stuff because you said something to me on our phone call the other day that it's not Washington State based, but I've got to ask it. You recorded your soon to be released album at a studio that nobody's probably ever heard of before, called Abbey Road.
Yeah.
Can you try to express what that was like to be there?
When I've tried to explain it, it's sort of like one of those things where I feel like words fall short and that it actually ruins it when I try to explain it, or like it just can't, it just can't come close. It doesn't ruin it, but it just doesn't come close to the actual experience. And I think, it ended up being, and especially so speaking of all those things that I was just talking about, of how special it was for so many of those people to be at the Croc and play that show, or be, when we played these other iconic Seattle venues, it's cool for me. I can understand it, and I definitely feel appreciative, but it's not as cool as for those people who definitely in their musical formative years, that was part of the mythos, and so take all of that and now put that onto Abbey Road. That's for me. I mean, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and and growing up, that was, especially Abbey Road was, one of those records, that and Sgt. Pepper's just were spoke to me in this crazy, deep, special way, and were such a huge part of my wanting to pick up the guitar and learn the guitar, and just sitting and listening to the records and really kind of studying the records, studying the production, studying the songwriting, reading. I've read just dozens of books on the Beatles, and there's a really great book, actually, if you're interested, about on the Beatles and Abbey Road, called Solid State, that I read right around the time that we recorded there. So it was really even cool to be in the place, reading about the stuff that was happening. But so to be there and to be right in the middle of it, I mean, it's a well-run professional studio. It's old. I mean, there's some places that you can kind of see the age, but for the most part, I mean, it's top notch, and the gear is insane. The sounds they get are unreal. I mean, they send you home, and they send a big part of their sound is they send it through their reverb. And so they have these reverb plates that they I think in the 60s, they said, maybe before that even, they had put into the ceiling. And so the sound gets sent up into the reverb plate in the ceiling and then comes back through. I'm not a technical guy. You should ask my producer. He could actually tell you in depth what was happening, but all I knew was it sounded unreal. And then for me, we did all of our recording in Studio 3, and so there was a lot of Abbey Road stuff that happened there. It's one of the smaller studios. Studio 2 is the sort of the famous Beatles studio, but okay. But a lot of stuff also happened in Studio 3, and so being in there was really incredible. And and I started kind of this game with Simon, our the engineer there, the house engineer, who was just a great. I mean, so British, and just so dry, very funny. But very rarely ever smiled. I kept trying to get him to bust up, and he just always kind of held it, together.
Very stoic, if you will.
Very, okay. Super cool guy, really funny. And, but I started playing a game with him because I think that people, for a while there, Abbey Road was kind of at a crossroads because it had become a place where rich, primarily rich Japanese businessmen would come through and rent it out, and basically just rent it out to do Beatles karaoke, to kind of be part of that, to experience that kind of thing. And they were paying full price for it, And so then Abbey Road eventually kind of said, we want to be a real studio that's still, putting out work that matters. And so they you have to go through a vetting process to get in there. And so they're pretty serious about their work and what they do. And the London Philharmonic was there, the London Symphony Orchestra was there next to us, recording a soundtrack for a movie that has since got, shelved with everything else because of quarantine. But
the latest Bond movie or something.
Yeah, it was a Marvel movie, and I'm blanking on what it was, but it's the Russian, it's the Scarlett Johansson movie. Okay. Black Widow, right? Okay. Is that no, not Black Widow. Wait, is that right? I don't know.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, I can't remember that stuff. Anyway, they were there doing that. So it became, the whole point is it's very professional. And, when people come in, I think they're very professional about it. And they've tried to kind of, I think people, even musicians, try to not fanboy too much while we're there, and I was just screw that. I am 100% going to fanboy while I'm here. This is incredible. simple, you know, like I'm not going to pretend to be all cool about this. Like I am going to experience this and, you know, talk about the joy that I'm feeling. So I started having this like game that I would do with Simon of like, who's the most famous person to ever. And then, you know, like if they'd bring out a piano or something or, you know, and it was just incredible that the history and, you know, we were playing Rhodes and it was like, who's the most famous person to ever play this Rhodes? And he said, oh, probably John Lennon, you know, and it's just like, holy crap, you know, like the same one is here. Like, I feel like Indiana Jones. I kept saying that should be in a museum, you know, it's just incredible to know that, you know, that was happening, or, you know, it was the same studio where Dark Side of the Moon was fully recorded. And so a lot of the Pink Floyd stuff was there. And, you know, we asked for a piano that had a real like Beatle-y sound. And it's funny because they would say, well, what can you be more specific? Like what song? And we're like, oh, I don't know, like Good Day Sunshine or Lovely Rita Meter Maid or that kind of that upright, bright piano, you know? And they said, oh yeah. And then they brought in that piano, you know, and, wow. You know, there was one song in particular where on the drum sound, we really wanted to have a Ringo. There's this big Ringo fill, you know, and we were like, we wanted to have that Ringo sound, you know, and they said, oh, okay. And so then they brought in the microphones they used to record Ringo Starr, you know, in the 60s. And so that kind of stuff was incredible. I think one of the most like, wow moments for me though was when they set me up with the vocals and standing in front of this vocal mic. And I don't remember, again, I'm not a technical guy. So, you know, our Matt would remember or Aaron, my producer, would remember, but they put this very famous microphone in front of me. And so I asked Simon, who's the most famous person to ever sing to this microphone? And we were just about to take a 10-minute, you know, coffee break. And so, he goes, well, here, come out here. And so we go into the hallway, and just lined on the wall are pictures of people who have recorded there. And he points at Ella Fitzgerald and he said, that right there, that's the same microphone you're about to sing into. And then he goes to Frank Sinatra and then Nat King Cole. And then you see the Beatles, all, you know, all four of them around this microphone. And, it was just one of those like, oh, wow moments where, you know, I was just like, I can't believe that this is about to happen. And like I said, I wasn't even trying to hide it. Like I wasn't trying to play it cool, because I was just like, I am absolutely elated to be here. So this is amazing. I got actually pretty teary, you know, in that moment.
I can't imagine. I think I would get stuck in my head if I thought I was using the same instrument that, you know, John Lennon played on. I don't know that not that I can't play a piano anyway, but I don't know that I could make my fingers work. Right. I don't know that I could sing into that microphone. I'm not worthy would keep going through my mind, you know?
Yeah.
But what I didn't, and not that I know much about recording studios, because I don't, but what I didn't realize was that at, say, a place like Abbey Road, that you could ask for, you know, an upright piano style and they're going to wheel something out for you. So I can only imagine what sort of collection of gear they must have accumulated over the years.
Yeah, it's world class is what it is. I mean, they have, because they have state of the art stuff there too, but also there's, I think part of what people are really wanting out of Abbey Road is whatever the Abbey Road sound is, which again, not to beat a dead horse, I'm not a technical guy, so I don't know, but whatever it is, that's what you get. I mean, we were, you know, you actually walk out of there several times. We recorded all the string section stuff there too. And you walk out of there with very British Abbey Road sounding strings. And none of us could quite put our finger on why, you know, on what it was, but it was exactly what we wanted. And
it was a great venue for what you're trying to accomplish with your
absolutely
your album.
Yeah.
Okay. How long did it take you in the studio to do this, to record the album? I mean, I know to lay everything down, how long did that take?
Well, we had 2 days there. So 20 hours. So we were, but we had done quite a bit of pre-production to be ready for it. So not everything was recorded there, but a lot of the main stuff was recorded there.
In 2 days.
Yeah. So we just knew, like, we went in going, okay, what are the things that we want to have that Abbey Road sound on, you know? And so that's what we did. We did, all the piano, almost all the piano. And we did all the strings there. We did, drums. There was a lot of stuff that we crammed in, but we were very prepared, and we were just running on a pretty smooth schedule.
So did you bring your musicians with you? I mean, did they?
Yeah, we my producer, Aaron Sternke, is one of those guys you want to punch in the face because he can do everything and do it at such a high level. It's incredible. And where I'm like, I can do one thing pretty good, I guess, like he was, and actually kind of funny story about, just learning to trust people is, Aaron and I had worked together for a little bit, and I've always known that whatever he produces is excellent, and we kept talking about in pre-production, he would say, we would talk about drummers, and, I was like, well, we could get this guy, or we could do this or whatever. And he's like, and I'll just play. I could just actually play it, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But I've never heard him play. I didn't even actually know he played drums at the time. So I was like, oh, okay. He's never led me wrong so far. And then we got there and he sat down to play, and I was like, oh, he's like a real drummer. He's like a studio drummer. Okay. Geez Louise.
Okay. So you recorded, well, let's just say you recorded at Abbey Road, and then you get the tape, if you will, probably digital, but you get the tape. And then what was next in the process? For those of us that have never recorded an album, can you kind of, let's walk through this whole thing. Like, so you've got that done.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, to kind of place this very specifically in a timeline that everyone will understand, the next thing was actually scrambling to get home, because this was right at the time where where the pandemic was where quarantine was on the table, and that was all kind of like, I don't know, are they really going to shut down school or buildings or businesses or whatever? That all felt so like they'll never do that, that'll never happen. And when we went over there, we were there for about a week, and when we got there, the coronavirus was not even really the top story on BBC. It was like a Prince Harry story or something, and so, but by the end, it was very much the top story, and to the point where we actually were wondering if we'd get back home. And so we got home 2 days before they closed the borders. Wow. And so we were grateful to, and I mean, I was on, we were on a jumbo jet, transatlantic. And I mean, I think there were 12 people on the flight, maybe, that's supposed to hold hundreds of people,
300, 400 people. Yeah.
So it was very eerie. It felt like a zombie movie, but yeah, so we got home, and then we're trying to just kind of figure out what in the world is happening in the world right now. And, but then, after that, then what you do is you start looking at what you have, and you start kind of editing pieces that maybe were, not as good, or you listen to, we took several takes, multiple takes per song, and you start kind of going, this take was better, or take 3 of verse 1 was better, but take 4 of verse 2 was better. And so digital, you can much easier than tape. You can put those things together, and you start editing them together, and then you come back for overdubs. And so you fix things, or you add things, you sweeten things, you do all that. And then once you feel like you've got everything that you need, then it goes to mix. And then like I said, Aaron, the producer, he's also an incredible mixing engineer as well, which is usually hard to come by. Usually a lot of producers can't mix, or vice versa, but he's very talented. So yeah, he mixed it all, and then we were ready to go, and we were going to start releasing like in May of 2020. And and just as things just continue to go the opposite way of opening up, everything was closing down more. We've just been sitting on it, just trying to figure out, oh man, what do we do? And then in the midst of sitting on it, my manager has been, sending it out to his friends or his connections in the music industry. And so we've had some label interest of, possibly having picked up. So now we're like, oh, well, do we wait on that or do we, so it's just kind of felt like a lot of hurry up and wait. And now it's just a lot of just wait. But we're committed to get it out in 2021 for sure.
Okay. Now, so this is, I guess, is this a side project to the West Coast feed, or is this simultaneous project? Is it what,
Yeah.
Because the album sounds different than the band does.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've always, that's a good question. No one's asked me that. I mean, I would say yes, they're all happening, I'm not, the West Coast feed is still very much alive and well. And 2020, actually, we had more shows lined up than we'd ever had. And we're really excited about it. And all of them, 100% of them got canceled, just like everybody else. And so we're looking forward to, when things reopen, getting back out there and playing. I mean, the West Coast feed, the cornerstone, I think, of the West Coast feed is the live show. Just that, that fun, bombastic, just, blow off some steam. It's just a fun show. And then the solo thing is just it's a different animal. It's got a little bit of everything, but it's a little bit more stuff that I've even pitched, to the West Coast feed that we just didn't feel like was a good fit. It was like a little too slow. What we realized was that, we have some ballads, and those ballads make for really great bathroom breaks for people during shows. And so
nice of you to think of your audience.
Yeah. And we were like, bathroom breaks / and then if it's too late in the set, it just becomes the point where people are like, okay, well, let's get out here and see if we can beat the rush, the parking lot. So, so we just realized that like, we really are not, West Coast feed is not a like, oh, we can also show you the sensitive side, so that's been a lot of my solo stuff, is stuff that I've written in the past, and several of the songs are new as well for the solo thing. But a lot of it started as kind of songs that didn't find a home in West Coast feed first. And so it's fun for me because I feel like I can kind of express more of myself through these two different projects. And they are very different. I mean, it's very my solo stuff's very string heavy, very kind of, some of it has kind of an older singer-songwriter Elton John vibe to it. And, and then West Coast feed's kind of like all shock and awe and like horn section. And
so how did you guys come up with the name, the West Coast feed? What was the trigger that was what clicked?
Well, I've always done music my whole life. And while back, I was in a band that when I grew up in California, and right out of college in LA, this band I was in called Daily Planet, we got signed to a record deal. And
that's a cool name for a band.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, cool. I don't think it would have flown now, though. I'm pretty sure we would 100% gotten sued. But
but that's a cool name.
But I've always loved Superman. So we moved to Nashville and got a record deal and recorded, put out the first single, and felt like we were living the scene from That Thing You Do, where our first single went #1 across the nation. And we, got on some big tours, and things seemed to be going well. Then the album cycle, I mean, there were a lot of ups and downs. It wasn't all ups for sure, but there was enough momentum going that we felt like maybe we could, that we could break through. And then kind of towards the end of that, about a year after the album had come out, we were in LA playing a show, and I jumped off some drum risers and I landed funny, and I ended up shattering my leg and dislocating my ankle. and it was a pretty serious injury, and the show was over. And
you didn't go on.
To be honest, I did try, Scott. I did try. Okay. I thought to myself, I was totally in shock, and I thought to myself, I'm going to stand up. I know I hurt myself, but I think I just sprained my ankle. And I'm going to stand up and see how bad it was. And then when I stood up, it just made it worse. And I ended up passing out, like kind of in front of the drum kit. And next thing I remember is waking up and seeing the band all over me, like standing over me, like, are you okay? Is this a joke? And so, but anyway, it ended up, I couldn't walk for months, and ended up needing multiple surgeries. And, it was the whole thing ended up just being a nightmare, and it was over just like that. And so, when people, tell me before show, like, hey man, break a leg, I always kind of immediately shiver and go into PTSD.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's not a good one for you. Okay. You've got that t-shirt. Don't do it again. Right.
So, so we, so the band ended up disbanding after that. And, just one of those things where I was just like, man, what just happened? We were so close, and now it's gone, And, so the West Coast feed, years and years later, when we were talking about doing this, I just always kind of love the concept that when it comes to live television, this is kind of an old school concept now, but when it comes to live television, for SNL, for example, you have the East Coast feed. And then 3 hours later, you get the West Coast feed. And basically, it's the whole idea of like, you get a second shot at getting it right. And so that's where the name came from.
That's a great story.
Oh, thanks.
That's a great story. So let's, the elephant in the room for everybody is that, well, let's just say COVID sucks.
Yep.
And it's been hard on artists and performers and everybody. And you're not performing live right now, or you kind of are. I just was watching this performance from the Kirkland Performance Center that you were doing, and you had the strings in another room, socially distanced, and then you and your piano player were in another room.
Yep.
As a performer, that's got to be lacking at least the energy of some people in the audience. I mean, but what do you think musicians can be doing right now to stay I don't want to say relevant, because music's always relevant, but how do you keep putting your work out there? How do musicians and bands, what do you do?
I don't know. And I don't know that anybody's figured it out. I mean, when we first started, in the quarantine, the live stream thing was huge. And all of us had tuned into at least one, and, even some of my favorite artists, that I would watch, and it just sort of leaves you like a little, it just leaves you a little hollow. It actually kind of made me feel more sad at the end than like happy, because it just reminds you of the thing that you can't get to,
It's like drinking decaf.
Yeah, right. So we were, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody just kind of burnt out on the live stream thing for the most part, because I know people are still doing them and people will still tune in, but it just doesn't have the draw that it used to. And I think it's because of that. I think that because it just sort of ends up ringing a little hollow. It's tough to, technically, to get that across streaming. And there's a lot of stuff on the back end that's happening there to try to make that happen. So, so the live stream thing, I think, we'll continue to try to do those here and there and mess with what they look like. But, there's a lot of artists that I know that are sitting on music right now that are not releasing, because live is such a huge part of the experience. For people to experience that, it's pushing, hey, this is a song that we want to push you to come and experience live. And so a lot of people I know are sitting on music because of that. And so I think that right now I'm actually grateful when people do release albums. And usually, I don't know if you've noticed, but like when bigger artists release, it's almost always because it got leaked ahead of time and they were sort of forced to release, or whatever. I think that's what happened to like the Dua Lipa album and I think even the Lady Gaga album, or things like that. But I'm grateful for the artists that are releasing now, but but I totally get why people are waiting. And I think that, 100 years ago when the Spanish flu, was over and brought about the roaring 20s, that this is going to be this, I mean, we are going to experience the golden age of music, in this decade, because there's so many great albums that people haven't released. And then while they're sitting on albums, they're also releasing other great albums. And so we're going to be, music is going to start to experience, be a little bit more like Netflix, where it's sitting on 4 years of content, as opposed to the cycle that I think musicians struggle with, which is, write an album. If you're still releasing albums at a time, or even if you're just doing singles, it's write whatever you can when you can find the time, and then get out and play as much as possible and find some time to record and whatever. And, perhaps this season might break that cycle for for many musicians, that, we actually might be able to stop and be more thoughtful about it, and not feel like we're kind of constantly just, running to stand still creatively.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's really interesting. And what, I've got a concern that the venues are not going to be
that's
available. I mean, how are those guys, the owners of the venues, going to be able to stay, afloat?
I think, I hope I'm wrong, but I think we might see a rise in singer-songwriter type stuff again, of like just a guy and a piano, a gal and a guitar, or whatever that looks like. And I think some of that might be because the mid-level venues may not make it through this, and the places where people like that may have an opportunity to go in. But if you do, you play with the band. You don't play by yourself. You need support. You need to be able to fill the room with sound or whatever. I think we may see some new rise in that coffee shop scene that we saw in like the, it's sort of in the 90s, in the early 2000s, of, of people who are like, all I need is a mic and a, and a place to sit. Yeah, exactly. And give me, and more, that kind of stuff that we can see people build even closer audiences, more committed audiences with. Right.
So you just did another live stream though in Yakima, correct? At the Seasons?
Yes. Yep.
How did, let's just, from your side of it, how was that? I mean,
well, we came in pretty ambitious. We were doing a full band and string section, and we were playing to, and we also were playing with some tracks that we had to kind of sweeten the sound. And so it's a beautiful spot. If you haven't been there, it's
I have not yet.
Really, yeah. It is outstanding. I mean, it's an old, I think they said it was an old church. Oh, what is it called? Christian Science Church that was built like 100 years ago.
I'm looking at a photo of it right now. Yeah. And it was a repurposed Christian Science Church, which was started to build in 1917.
Yeah. So it's like, and, but it has a little bit more of a feel of like like you're in Washington, DC or something. There's sort of like an awe about it of, and there's beautiful stained glass all throughout. And, it was outstanding. The staff was just wonderful. So kind. And, they're struggling right now too, but but they were first class. And so but doing a live stream is tough because there is no, I have no idea what, musicians have this probably nervous habit, or we learned it a long time ago, that when you're done with a song, you immediately say, thank you. But when you're doing a streaming, do you thank you for what? I don't know what you're doing, like, are you still there? So
knock on the screen.
It's very odd, to like feel that disconnect in something that is designed to be a connecting agent, and so that was really odd. But I will say, with everyone being so locked down, especially in King County here in Washington, it was so fun to be in a room with, several other people making music together. I just felt I was just smiling most of the time, just enjoying it.
So, okay. So for let's ask the two questions for West Coast Feed, questions for you as a solo artist. What's next?
Well,
that's probably maybe a tough question because we don't know what is coming.
I don't.
What's next?
I'm hoping. So for the West Coast Feed, I'm hoping what's next is that that all of the shows we had scheduled get rescheduled, and that when things reopen, that we're ready to go. We're ready to roll, and excited to get back out there and play together. And I think we've been playing for 3 or 4 years now, and have been. I feel like we're tight in our we've really honed in our live show. So getting back out there and doing that, trying to figure out what the recording side of things looks like. And quarantine, several members of the band have family members who are high risk, and so we can't really be together. Right. So trying to figure out that side of things, but certainly go ahead.
Can you guys practice virtually? I mean, I don't know. I mean, do y'all get together on Zoom and try to do something?
No, we've seen people try it, and there's just too much lag. There's too much, and like there's no way to mix on Zoom. So everybody's coming in, and when you have competing volumes, it just ends up canceling each other out, and it just doesn't work. Okay. So no, we can't. We haven't found a way successfully to rehearse digitally. Okay. But yeah, getting back and playing live, that's a big goal for us, as a band. And then, for the solo stuff, it is to start releasing the music. And so we're really hoping to be able to start getting stuff out. I mean, we will get stuff out in 2021. It's just kind of a matter of when, but I think right now we're shooting for like, maybe a March release of starting to release some singles and then release the whole thing.
Now you have a Patreon account, or I guess, is that the right word to use? Yeah. You're available on Patreon.
Yep.
And some of the songs are available if people follow you on Patreon?
Yeah. So if you become a patron, there's 3 different levels. And if you get the highest level, you can download, I'll send you the link to the entire album right now. So the entire unreleased album you can get right now. And then there's 2 other tiers below that will be, one's like half the album and one's a single, I think, or something like that. But if you want to start getting music, right away, that's the best way to do it. And that's a great way to support independent artists right now as well, in a time where there's no money in music. I mean, as if there's a ton of money in music when it's not quarantine, but
right. It really, what's the joke about musicians? They, take $5,000 worth of gear and a $500 car to make $50 type,
that sounds thing. Right. Yeah.
It's kind of that, but so people, we'll put a link in the show notes to that. So if people want to check out the album early, they can do that.
Great.
Let's see. Besides music, what are you doing these days?
So I am a pastor of a church that I used to say we were in Bellevue, but we're in nowhere right now. We're on the internet.
Well, you're nowhere and everywhere.
Yes, exactly. So we haven't met in almost a year. And it's called Rain City Church. And so that keeps me still plenty busy with trying to figure out, we kind of have become like professional YouTubers at this point with, the stuff that we're doing, but still really proud of the work that we're doing. And we have a really open, inviting, generous community, still able to do a lot of work, both locally and globally with COVID relief. Here locally, we do a lot of rent help and, for people who have lost jobs because of COVID and things like that. We've been able to help hundreds of people here locally with that stuff. And then we also are committed to partners that are doing global work with vulnerable children and orphan care. And that's really close to my wife and my heart. We adopted our daughter, Harper, from Ethiopia, and have seen it firsthand of just the need that is around the world. So we've been able to, through the church and through other private fundraising, have raised millions of dollars for that organization called All God's Children International. And then we're really committed to seeing water poverty gone throughout the world, that people, that's something as simple as getting clean, easy access to clean water should be, it seems like in today's day and age that should be a no-brainer, and yet that is still not the case. And so we are working with our partners called Water for Good and Charity Water in places like Ethiopia and Central African Republic to see water poverty gone. Hopefully by 2030 is the goal. And so we are committed to that. And in fact, we are so committed to that even through all the music things that we do through the West Coast feed and also through my solo project, all of the merch that we sell, all the hats, t-shirts, CDs, records, all of that kind of stuff, 100% of the profit of that goes to those causes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's commendable.
So
very commendable.
We try to practice what we preach and help people go out and have a good time and experience connectedness and art and all of the fun stuff, but also give people an opportunity to give back as well.
Well, it's interesting because I'm going to guess that COVID's impacted the church too. I mean, you're not meeting in person, so you had to adapt to continue to function.
Yeah.
And it's just when we talk to people, it's just been very interesting to hear how people have creatively worked around the restrictions that they're facing. And so I like to hear when people are finding creative ways. Hopefully these are very temporary and that, 6 months from now, you're playing live, your church is meeting live, you're having coffee at your favorite coffee shop with a friend in person.
Yep.
That's what we all hope for, but it's out of our control in a way.
Yep.
So why don't we wrap this up so I can let you go on your day? Cause you mentioned earlier, you've got homeschooling to work on. So
3 kids at home. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's surprising. We've been talking for quite a while and I haven't heard them. So they're
yes. I think my wife's doing a really good job corralling right now. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where can people find you online and hear your music and learn more about you?
So you can, jessebutterworth.com, JESSE, Butterworth, like the syrup, .com. And you can find me there. You can follow along on socials. I think pretty much everything is at Jesse Butterworth on all the usual spaces. And then the westcoastfeed.com is where you can find us for the West Coast feed. And West Coast feed is our album as well as actually we just released last fall the deluxe version of our album. So it's got all of the songs that were originally on it, but also all of kind of the new versions and some of the other stuff we've done since then. And we just kind of packaged it all in one place. And that's on wherever you listen to digital music, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for being on. And it was a lot of fun for me. And I appreciate you and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.